All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can all hear me. If anyone can't hear me, raise their hands. Awesome. Welcome to the session. My name is Chandar Venkatraman. I'm the Director of New Enterprise Initiatives at AWS. And joining me this session is Mardi Sajjadpur. He's a Principal Business Development Manager. And today we're going to talk about using AWS Control Tower to set up and govern your multi-account AWS environments. So typically, enterprises have had to deal with traditional compromises they had to make between balancing the needs of the developers with the needs of central cloud IT teams, also called Cloud Center of Excellence in many enterprises. Developers want the agility, they want to innovate. On AWS, they really like the speed and flexibility that AWS offers, and they really don't want IT in the way. But if you looked at the needs of cloud IT, they want to establish central policies so they can have the governance in place. And it's usually a trade-off, right? And enterprises really do not like being forced into making a compromise between the needs of developers and the needs of IT. And not anymore. So with AWS Control Tower, now there's a way where enterprises can cater to the needs of business agility as well as governance control. So with Control Tower, IT and your builders can have the agility that they need, while central policies for security, compliance, operations, and spend management can be governed centrally. IT can have, business developers can have the self-service access that gives them the speed and agility. So what is Control Tower? Control Tower is a new service we just announced general availability 2 days ago. It's a service that provides you the easiest way to set up and govern your multi-account AWS environments at scale. With Control Tower, you can enable, provision, and operate your AWS environment with the business agility and the governance control that you need in your enterprise. So now let's look at the three components or the three benefits that Control Tower offers you. The first thing is enabling for governance, right? So when you set up your multi-account environment, you already know that you're going to have a growing footprint on AWS with thousands of resources, dozens of accounts, and dozens of teams accessing your multiple accounts. So you really want to enable all your accounts for governance. So Control Tower enables 4 main things to help with governance. The first thing is setting up an AWS landing zone, and I'll talk about what a landing zone means in a bit. And the second thing it does is to centralize your identity and access management. And this is a big benefit to bring it all in a centralized place versus distributing your identity and access management into multiple accounts with multiple IAM users. And it allows you to establish guardrails for governance, and that's enabling your environment for the policies that you want to implement across your accounts. And automating a compliant account provisioning. And now we'll look into all of these in more detail. And once you set it up, you can manage all of these continuously. And it's an ongoing enablement, not just a one-time thing, where it allows you to fine-tune how you set your things up. So what is a landing zone? A landing zone, at the end of it, is a multi-account environment that's based on best practices. And what Control Tower does is it pre-configures a landing zone for you, and it automates the creation of a landing zone with just a few clicks, versus spending weeks or months learning about the best practices and spending all the effort putting it all together. A landing zone automates a lot of things under the covers, so you really don't need to work with the complexity of setting multiple services up which are needed for governance. The first thing it does is provisions AWS organizations for a multi-account structure, because that provides the foundation for how you want to organize all your accounts in your enterprise. And then the identity and federated access management is provisioned using AWS SSO, and I'll talk about these in more detail in a bit. And then it sets up a central log archive using services like CloudTrail and Config. And what it pretty much does is enables CloudTrail to log all your account activity in Control Tower managed accounts, and Config to record all your resource configurations, and automatically sets up every account to send these logs to a central log archive, which is constructed in this central log archive account. So you really don't need to worry about having all your new accounts being set up for logging. And once you set up the central log archive, this becomes your single source of truth for all your security and account activity logs within your enterprise. And these are accounts that you should consider locked for special roles and special people in your organization that you give access to. Likewise, there's a cross-account audit access, and that's enabled by an audit account. And think about cases where you have security professionals or auditors within your organization needing access to all accounts that are going to be provisioned by your developers within the organization. And Control Tower automatically sets up a read access or administrative break glass access into each of these accounts. And we have pre-configured groups, which I'll walk you through in a bit. And just by assigning users to these carefully managed groups, you are setting up all your accounts for a central audit access, or with read or break glass administration into these accounts. And account provisioning is a big need for enterprises, where they typically deal with ticketing systems and a central team approving requests by developers who want to create accounts for their applications, and then having to worry about standardization of these accounts with configurations that comply with their corporate policies. Control Tower provides you with an account factory, which is a template where you define basic network configuration settings for how your accounts you'd like to be standardized with. And then it's automatically published to a service catalog where your end users can configure and provision accounts. And this automates the account provisioning workflow, which is typically cumbersome in a multi-account organization. Last but not least, we have centralized monitoring and notifications set up through CloudWatch and SNS notifications, where you're alerted with security and network-related activities that go within your organization. So what is the multi-account architecture that we configure out of the box? I mentioned AWS organizations is provisioned for you, and we take your existing account that you sign into Control Tower, and that becomes a master account, which then creates an organization for you. And out of the box, we create two organizational units, one what we call as a core organizational unit. And if anyone's wondering what an organizational unit is, it's a container to group accounts. And the grouping is both for account organization and facilitating easy enablement of policies at a level which then all underlying accounts can inherit. So the core OU has the accounts that Control Tower pre-creates, which are the audit account and the log archive account, and they're organized under the core OU. And custom OU is the default container where your end user provisioned accounts go. And we expect you to create more organizational units depending on how you want to organize your end user provisioned accounts. And there are multiple best practices to do that. organizing by BU or by function or by projects or by application lifecycle like dev, pre-prod, prod, and there's no one way to do it. I talked about how identity and access management is automatically configured for you. And what Control Tower does is provision AWS SSO, which provides a default directory where you can manage your users and groups on the cloud. And SSO, by its nature, also provides federated access management. And every account that's provisioned within your organization is now going to be automatically set up with federated access management for the groups and the users that you configure. And we'll show you in the demo how Control Tower sets up a lot of pre-configured groups. And these are some examples where you have Control Tower administrators. They are the ones that are going to be enabling guardrails and configuring the account factory, working with other security and compliance professionals within the organization. And we have the auditor read group, an auditor write group, service catalog end users, which becomes the default group where your end users get access to the account factory and they can configure and provision accounts. And these come with pre-configured permission sets as well, depending on what roles have been defined. You have admin, read-only, and write. And these are all set up automatically for you, so you really don't need to worry about the basic groups that come out of the box. But you can go into SSO and are free to configure more groups and users depending on how you want to provide access and define different specialized roles within your organization. And if you're wondering if you have Active Directory that you want to integrate with, you can go into AWS SSO and configure SSO to work with your Active Directory, both on-premises or managed on the cloud, using Active Directory connector and AWS Directory Service. Now, once you've set your basic multi-account environment in place, the next is ongoing governance. And this is where Control Tower introduces a notion of Control Tower Guardrails, which are pre-configured governance rules, which are available to you out of the box. And these are curated AWS governance rules and policies that we have collected working with many of our enterprises who are wanting these to be set up by default. And compared to the granular policies that you're all familiar with, which SCPs or IAM or resource policies like S3 buckets, guardrails and Control Tower are expressed in plain English, and that makes it very easy for you to understand the intent of a guardrail and then quickly enable it on your organizational units. And typically you want to enable these even before accounts are provisioned in your organization, and that gives you the confidence that as and when accounts are provisioned in your organization, they are going to be falling in compliance. So you really don't need to detect and worry about remediation after the fact. Guardrails come with two behaviors depending on what they are. Preventive guardrails, by definition, can establish an intent within the accounts and then prevent the configuration from drifting. And we do it through service control policies that Control Tower attaches in AWS organizations, depending on which OU you select a guardrail to be enabled on. And when a preventative guardrail is enabled, all the accounts underneath inherit them, and we kind of ensure that these stay in compliance. And there's a different behavior, we call them detective guardrails, which are built using AWS config rules. And think about these as constantly monitoring your environment for non-conformance based on what the config rule is set up to detect. And then when a resource is in non-compliance, it's going to be alerting you in the dashboard. And you also get SNS notifications, so you can go and remediate them. We offer guidance in terms of what we consider default or mandatory guardrails. So when you set up Control Tower, a set of guardrails are just going to be enabled on your organizational units, the custom OU and the core OU by default, so you really don't have to worry about those governance policies being in effect. And I'll give you some examples of that in a bit. And then there are other guardrails that are available to you that we strongly recommend, and those you should consider as optional, and depending on your corporate policy, you are free to enable them on specific OUs. And these are some examples of guardrails. At GA, we have 26 guardrails out of the box, and we have a roadmap where we're going to be making more guardrails available to you. And guardrails span multiple categories: IAM security, network security, data security, some in compliance and operations. And these are some examples of the guardrails that you can quickly enable on your organizational units. As one example, disallowing public read or write access on your S3 buckets at GA is available to you as a detective guardrail. And then you can enable it and quickly know which buckets have been enabled for public read or write, and then you get notified in the dashboard and you quickly react to that. And at the end, you see a drift guardrail, and think about those as what a Control Tower administrator could possibly do. One of the tenets of Control Tower is to be transparent, which means the underlying services that are set up by Control Tower are still accessible to you. You can go to these services like AWS organizations and configure rules and do additional things that you want to do. As one example, we talked about the out-of-the-box guardrails, but then if you want to have a granular SCP be put in place, you're free to go to AWS organizations and add SCPs to the OU. The only guidance that we offer is do not edit the Control Tower managed SCP that's put in place to incorporate the mandatory guardrails that we have in place for preventive behavior. So drift there talks about for the resources that Control Tower sets up in other services, we can detect when an administrator, Control Tower administrator, can knowingly go and do certain things in these underlying services, and we will alert you in the Control Tower dashboard. And using SNS notification that certain drifts have happened, and so you need to be aware of it and fix it if certain things need fixing. And we have 7 preventive guardrails to prevent drift, in addition to the detection that we do. All right, I talked about how Control Tower facilitates account provisioning within your organization. So the account factory is the feature for you to do that. So out of the box, an account factory exists, and think about it as a template where you can go configure things like if you're going to allow a public subnet within your account, or if you're going to want to determine or limit the maximum number of private subnets. And there's an IP address management that's built in as part of the account factory. And those are all configurable by the Control Tower admin inside of Control Tower. And once you do all that, the account factory is automatically published to a service catalog, which is being provisioned automatically to you. And that completes the enablement piece of the governance that I talked about. Let's look into how provisioning then happens within your organization. And this is where the service catalog comes in. Now, your end users that you've given access to using the pre-configured group that says service catalog end users are now going to have access to a service catalog. And what's the service catalog? Yeah, think about it as a central place where there are pre-approved resources for your teams and builders in your team to configure and provision. Service catalog allows products to be published to it, or you can manage a collection of products, define a portfolio, and publish it as a portfolio, which then can give access to specific teams, and the products inside those can be administered. And these are the different steps. The Control Tower administrator, this configuring an account factory, is then publishing it as a product to Service Catalog. And I already talked about how end users get access to it. And a Service Catalog administrator can do other things too. And there are application stacks and infrastructure stacks that you want to make available to your developers that are pre-approved. So you can eliminate the undifferentiated heavy lifting that every developer in your organization needs to do to build an app, because there's a lot of usage patterns that can just be authored by someone, pre-approved by IT, and then made available to your developers. So the model then is, once these are available, your end users can go directly to Service Catalog. They will find an account factory as a product, and they can configure it using the same parameters that you configured, which is network factory, and they can specify which organizational unit this account should go under. And that's important because that determines the guardrails that are going to be inherited by the account automatically, right? And the baselines defined in account factory are automatically applied to the account. And then once inside an account, the end users are going to have additional access to additional products your Service Catalog administrator may have packaged and made available to them. And this model of a central team pre-approving accounts and resources and portfolios of products and making it available is a win-win. Going back to the business agility and the governance control I talked about, the end users still have access to all of your AWS services, and guardrails are going to be in place for whatever things they do. But if they want to leverage these additional Service Catalog products and portfolios, they're free to do that as well. All right, so last but not least, before we get into the demo, is the operational side of things. So once you set up and once resources are being provisioned in your organization, let's talk about how Control Tower provides an ongoing governance model. I mentioned how CloudWatch and SNS notifications are automatically set up for you. And depending on which account you configure for your audit account, you're going to get SNS notifications for important alerts and events that happen within your organization. And for all the detective rules that are put in place using config rules, you're going to get compliance notifications directly in the dashboard and in SNS notifications that you can quickly respond to. And we'll show you in the demo how the dashboard makes it easy for you. I talked about how, for audit purposes, auditors that you give access to are able to get into accounts with a read access, and then audit for resource configurations, who has access to what, and which guardrails have been enforced on those accounts. And Control Tower lets you act on things because of how we automatically configure it with SSO. Anything you see in the dashboard that displays an account or the set of resources that are not in compliance, you can quickly go using SSO inside that account and take remediation actions. Right? I think in that you can act on all those operational issues right away. And I talked about the dashboard, which brings it all together, offering continuous visibility into your entire environment. And this is what a dashboard looks like. I'm not going to dwell too much onto it because we have a real demo that we're waiting to show you, but it just gives you a list of your snapshot of your environment and the actions you need to take. With that, let's quickly look into a demo.
All right. Thanks, Chandar. So my name is Madi Sajadpur. I'm part of the BD team for Control Tower and Service Catalog. I'll kind of go through a quick demo of what Control Tower looks like. If you set it up the first time you go to Control Tower, you will have to set up, give it 2 emails, it'll set up a bunch of accounts. Once it takes about an hour for it to set up all the accounts that it's setting up for you, and then it'll give you a kind of message like the green one up there, like I set up the landing zone, Control Tower is available to you, and as Chandar mentioned before, You have a master account, which is the account I'm logged into right now, and it'll create two other accounts, which is the audit account and the log archive account, which both are created once it's created. And then once Control Tower is up and running, and you'll have a bunch of guardrails available to you. So if you scroll down, the first thing you see, if you see the menu on the left-hand side, this is the dashboard capability that Chandar just showed you a quick screenshot of. It gives you a bunch of recommended actions, so you can create a new OU through Control Tower. You can configure the account factory. You can create new accounts also directly from here, and I'll show you that in a second. You can enable more guardrails on the accounts that you have under Control Tower management, and then you could review user access for AWS SSO, and then look at all the other configurations you have. So I can minimize this and just go straight to kind of what my Control Tower environment looks like. So in this environment, I have 7 OUs that I've set up, and I have 8 AWS accounts that are under management. Now this just depends on how many OUs or accounts you configure through Control Tower with the account factory. I have about 23 guardrails enabled, so I have 17 preventive ones and 6 detective ones enabled, and I'll show you how I'll enable a guardrail on a given OU. Guardrails are applied at the OU level, but they apply to every account which is under that OU. Any new account you create will get the guardrails which are assigned to that OU at that point in time. Now you can click on any of these links, and it'll take you, for example, to the OU page, which you can also see on the left-hand side. It's the equivalent of that. Same thing with accounts, same thing with the guardrails. But I'll first go through the dashboard, and then I'll go through all the menu options on the left-hand side. So then I could scroll down further. I could see what's non-compliant in my environment. So I have a bunch of non-compliant resources that Control Tower has identified as being non-compliant. The one I'll focus on specifically is the one at the bottom, and if you remember, there was an encryption requirement that Chandar mentioned earlier, which is, let's say if we have a volume that's not encrypted, it's the ABS volume that's not encrypted and it's attached to an EC2 instance, you want to be able to detect that. So here's an example of a volume that is detected, and I can scroll to the right and I can see which region it belongs to. So it belongs to US East 1. I can see the account name. So this is CT Demo Account Creation 1. And then I could see which OU it belongs to. So it belongs to the CT Demo OU, and I can also see the guardrail which it's violating or it's out of compliance with. So then I have a good snapshot of what's out of compliance within my Control Tower environment, and I could dive a little deeper into seeing what is a specific volume. It gives me the specific volume, and I could go even deeper than that and see what's the actual rule that's being triggered from Control Tower, what's the config rule that's being triggered to do that. I could scroll down further and I could see all of the OUs that I have. So I have a bunch of OUs here that I've created. I could scroll to the right and I'll see, for example, the CT Demo OU show up, and the CT Demo OU is non-compliant. It means that there's an account within Control Tower that is non-compliant. So then the OU will show up as non-compliant. So then I can go and see what's going on within that environment. I could scroll down further and I could see the accounts that are under Control Tower management. And I can see the first 3 accounts, if you see there on the right-hand side where it says owner, the owner is AWS Control Tower. Those are your baseline core accounts that Control Tower sets up for you when you set up Control Tower. And they're kind of controlled by Control Tower, and they do also have guardrails applied to them. So if you remove a guardrail or something goes wrong, you can also get non-compliance with those accounts as well. You could look down further and you can see the other accounts that I've created, and you can see that the CT Demo account creation 1 is one of the ones that's in non-compliance. The other compliance guardrail that I'm missing is also the MFA for the root user, which I don't have enabled, which is how you see the CT account creation 2 show up in there as well. So I can scroll and see what are the other accounts that I have in my environment and what their compliance status is. The next thing I could do is scroll down in the dashboard and see what are the guardrails that I've enabled. So here's the guardrails that I've enabled. I can scroll to the right and see what all the guardrails are. As Chandar mentioned before, right, there's preventive and detective guardrails. So the preventive guardrails, think of them as they're implementing something like an SCP. Think of the detective ones as like an AWS config rule that's being applied to it, and you can actually see the details of it when we go through the guardrail detail page. So I can scroll and see what are the different guardrails I have enabled within my environment. Now that I have a dashboard view, let's say I want to kind of zoom in into what's the specific account configuration. I want to add an OU. I want to do other things from Control Tower. So I click on the accounts page, and you can see here all the accounts that I have created through Control Tower. And I can click on any of these accounts and kind of dive a little deeper into how it's configured, and kind of let's think of it from a operator point of view. If I'm an operator, I'll be able to see what's configured with the account. I don't have to be an AWS expert to figure all of this out. I could just click on it and I can get some information associated with it. So I can see what the account ID here is. I could see which OU it belongs to, what's the compliance status associated with it, and who created the account. Was it Control Tower or was it some end user within the environment? So in this particular case, if you see here, the account was not created through Control Tower. What's the email account associated with it, and all the other information associated with it. So I can scroll down, I can see what are the non-compliant resources within this particular account. So I can see the volume, I could see that all the accounts have the enable MFA for the root user turned on for this particular account. It does do checks on a per region basis. So Control Tower comes with 4 regions today. So US East 1, US East 2, US West 2, and Dublin are enabled. So then I can scroll down further and I can see what are the guardrails which are specifically applied to this account. These are the same guardrails that are applied to the OU which this account belongs to. So for example, I could scroll down and see that I have the disallow public write access to S3 buckets. I have the enable encryption for EBS volumes attached to EC2 instances, and that's the one that's being violated at this point in time. So now I could go and say, let's say I want to click on that particular guardrail and take a look at what that guardrail configuration looks like. So I'll click on it here. And I could go, if you see on the left-hand side, I'm now in the guardrail screen. I'll go back there and I'll show you some more details associated with it. So you can see the details of the guardrails, what's the guardrail name, what's the behavior associated with it, what's the guidance around it. So there's mandatory and strongly recommended. The mandatory ones are applied by default to the accounts. The strongly recommended ones you can apply to your OUs at will, and you can take them out as well. So you can disable guardrails as well within an OU. And it gives you a little summary on it. I can get more information around that guardrail. I can click on the info screen and get some more details around what's there.
You may also want to show them the guardrail artifacts.
Yeah, yep. And then I can scroll down further. I could see what the guardrail is made of. So it's an AWS config rule that's being applied. I can click on that link and I can actually see the YAML associated with that AWS config rule that's being applied to all the accounts within that OU. I could scroll down further from there and I could see what are the non-compliant resources that show up for that particular guardrail. So in this screen, I can see which ones are not being applied to it, which particular resources are in violation of this guardrail. And now I can scroll down further, and as I mentioned before, right, the guardrails are applied at the OU level, so I could see what are all the guardrails that are applied, all the OUs that have this guardrail applied to them. I could disable the guardrail for a given OU, so I can just click here and disable the guardrail. It'll take a few minutes for it to completely disable and move away from the screen, and I could also enable the guardrail on a given account as well. And I could scroll down further and I could get more details. What are the specific accounts to which this guardrail has applied to? So I can see all these are all the accounts which have this guardrail on it, and only one of them has that guardrail which is in non-compliance. Remember, the CT account creation too was in non-compliance when I showed it to you earlier, but this is only specific to this guardrail. So for that particular guardrail, that account is in compliance. All right, so going back to the account screen, I can also provision a new account. So I can click on this, which takes me to AWS Service Catalog, and it takes me to a product to enable me to allow me to create a new account. I'll get to that when I click on the Account Factory menu option, and I'll show you how you can configure some of the options associated with creating an account as well. But this also gives you a quick access to be able to create a new account, which is under Control Tower management. I can click on OUs and I can see what are all the OUs that are managed by Control Tower. So here's a list of OUs I have created here. I could scroll down and see what the OUs are. I could delete an OU from here, so I could just get rid of an OU I have. So I could, for example, get rid of the CT demo one. If you see the core and the root one are obviously grayed out because those are the ones that you need as baselines to be able to leverage it in that environment. I can also create an OU from here. See it go through. All right. And All right, and now I created a new OU, and I can create new accounts and associate them to that OU when I go through the account factory. You can dive a little deeper into each OU as well. So I can click, let's say, on CT demo, which is the one I have the non-compliant resource associated with, and I can see the OU information pop up for that account. What are the accounts that are associated to this given OU? This OU is in non-compliance because there's one account, at least one account there, which has a guardrail which has been violated and it's not meeting the guardrail requirements. I could scroll down further. I could see what are the exact accounts that are associated to that particular OU. So I have 3 accounts that are associated to this given OU, and then I can scroll down and see what are the guardrails that I've enabled for this particular OU. So these are all the guardrails that I have here. Now I want to be able to add a guardrail to this set of OUs. So Chandar mentioned earlier, like you can add an S3 bucket check, so to make sure that none of your S3 buckets are publicly accessible. So I'll go there and I'll show you. You can click on the and enable that, enforce that on the given OU. You would do that through the guardrail screen. So I click on the guardrails, and this list here gives you all of your guardrails that are made available to you. These are not all the guardrails that you have applied, so all the guardrails that are made available to you are listed here. And you can scroll down and see what are the different what's the guidance associated with them, what's the category they fall into, as Chandra mentioned it before, what's the behavior associated with it, are they preventive or are they detective, and then I can double click on each one of them and dive a little deeper. So let's go here and click on the list, and I can see, for example, here I have disallow public read access to S3 buckets. I could click on that particular guardrail. I'll get the same screen associated with it, with the guardrail screen. I can scroll down and see, what are the different, how is this guardrail made? It's made as an AWS config rule. I can click on the AWS config rule, get all of the information associated with it, and then scroll down and enable. See, I don't have any non-compliant resources, but I scroll down and I see that there's only 2 OUs associated with it, and I can add another OU to it as well. So I'll be able to, let's say, for example, add CT demo as a guardrail to this one. So I'll click here and I'll enable the guardrail. The way it implements the guardrail is it's actually launching a stack set in the background. You can go into the CloudFormation templates in the CloudFormation screen here, and you can see that it's actually it's actually applying this guardrail to that given account. When we go through the users and access in the AWS SSO section, actually log into that account. I can log into the accounts which are under CT demos OU and actually see that CloudFormation template run and that account. So that's all made visible to you, so you'll be able to see what's going on within your environment. Now, let's click on users and access. So this is where you would set up the AWS SSO configuration. If you use AWS SSO, it has some built-in groups that you'd be able to leverage to be able to create that environment. So I can see here that I have a portal that's associated with it. This is the login portal for SSO. So I can click on it and it takes me to that page. I would be able to put my information. Now I'm logged into the Control Tower master account, so I will have access to all of the accounts. Now, depending on what kind of configuration or group usage you assign to a user, you'd be able to get different types of accounts. So if I log in as an account which was provisioned here, I would be able to only see that account. So for example, if I use CT account creation 1, I would only see that account from the SSO page and be able to log into it. So here's a set of permission sets that we make available for you. So there's the AWS administrator access, there's AWS organizations full access, there's power users, and there's service catalog end user access to be able to take advantage of the account factory and provision products. And then you have different groups that you also create within AWS SSO that you can assign to different users that you create. So you can create an account factory user, you can create a log archive admin, and all these different types of users within SSO, and you can manage them as well from here. So I can go into AWS SSO and I would be able to manage those users or create new ones. So within this directory, I'll see what are the different users I have listed here, and I could create a new user. So let me just create a new user here. I'm going to make this user Control Tower admin for now, and then I'm going to add the user. And I could use this user when I create a new account or a provisioned account. I'll be able to take advantage of it. Now I have all of them named after me at this point, but I will use the email when I create the account. So now let's click on the account factory. I created a new user. I went through all the guardrails. I applied some new guardrails to that given OU that I had, and now I want to be able to configure how my accounts will look like. So here you could be able to set up some configuration items associated to those accounts that you provision. So if you see here, I can click on Edit, and you can see that if I create a new account, I can set up how the VPC would look like within that account, what are the subnets associated, what's the IP range that's going to be associated with it, and in which regions I want to be able to create those VPCs. So I can create a baseline VPC, I can have this as my CIDR range, and then within that environment I'll be able to, within those two regions, I will create a VPC with those CIDR ranges. So I can click on Cancel here and go back to the provision new account. So I'll go to the account factory. And I will launch this product, which creates a new account. So I can scroll down. It'll ask me some parameters for me to be able to create it. So here I will use my email that I just, the username that I just created. And I will pick the OU that's associated with it. So I will pick, let's say, the CT demo OU. Once I pick this OU, all the guardrails associated with this particular OU will get associated directly to this account. So they will have all of the guardrails associated with it. And then I click on Next, and I will be able to launch it. And it'll take a little bit of time for it to be created. I'll show you what it looks like once it's created. So I can click on Launch, and it'll start creating the account, applying all the guardrails associated with it. Let's see. Okay, this is kind of what the output looks like. Once it creates the account, it gives you the account ID, the email associated with it, and the SSO portal for you to be able to log into it. Some additional things you can see on Control Tower page is the three kind of baseline accounts that it creates. It creates a master account, the one I'm logged into, and it has a log archive and an audit account that Chandar mentioned. So I click on, for example, the log archive one, and I can see where's the S3 bucket, where everything is being logged into. And I can click on the audit account as well and get some details associated with the audit account. And since I've logged in and I'm logged in as a master, I will be able to log into some of these accounts and show you what those accounts look like. So for example, I'll be able to log into the audit account from here, and I'll go directly to the console. So it makes it very easy for me to be able to administer accounts that I already have in place. So this is the audit account. I'm going to get kicked out of the master account, and I'll be able to see what's going on within the audit account and be able to leverage it. I could go to CloudFormation and see what are the guardrails that are being actually applied to that account. So I click on, for example, here, and I'll see all the stack sets and the guardrails will be different CloudFormation stacks that are running on this account, and I can see what's going on within the account. Any sub-account I log into, I would be able to see the same kind of information. That was a quick overview of Control Tower. Anything you want to add to that, Chandar?
Thanks. I think that covered a lot of things. Let's go back to the tech. I'm just going to skip this. Pricing. Control Tower, there's no additional charge to using Control Tower. You just pay for the underlying services that Control Tower enables and the resources that are consumed based on the amount of accounts you provision in your org and what detective guardrails you're going to be deploying. Preventive guardrails that use SCPs come for free because there's no charge for that. Control Tower is available today in 4 regions, and we have a plan to expand Control Tower in more regions very quickly. And this is just a summarization of everything you heard and saw today. If you are wanting to set up a brand new AWS environment with best practices and standardize your account provisioning, Control Tower saves you significant time and effort. And this is a snapshot of all the features that you saw and in the demo. with that, Marty and I are going to stay here for a while. If you have more questions, we are free to, we'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you.